Welcome everyone, it's your boy Zero, back again with another exciting video. This time we're going to take a much deeper dive look into the Retro Fighters Defender controller. A lot of you enjoyed the unboxing last time, and a lot of you have been asking us questions about how well the controller works. In this video, we're going to explore how well the analog sticks work and also the pressure-sensitive buttons on the Defender. We're going to be pitting the Retro Fighters Defender against the Dualshock 2 and the Dualshock 3 to see how well it performs against both controllers. And to accomplish that task, I chose 4 of my favorite PS2 and PS3 games to test these controllers. It's going to be a fun time doing so why don't we just get started? Alrighty everyone, let's get started. Now in the previous video in the comments, one of our viewers, Leander, asked us, how are the dead zones on the Retro Fighters Defender? The dead zone of an analog stick refers to how far you have to push an analog stick before the controller registers an input. In other words, how far you have to push the analog stick before the character or the camera starts moving. Leander seems to like to play a lot of shooter games, and he wants to make sure that the dead zones on this controller are to his liking before he buys them. Now, in order to test the dead zones reliably, we're going to pit the Retro Fighters Defender against the Dualshock 2, and we're going to play one of my favorite games, Time Splitters Future Perfect. Let's get into it. Time Splitters is one of my favorite series on the PS2. Future Perfect being the third game, it has some of the best multiplayer gameplay you can find on the PS2, and it's one of the reasons why I chose it to test it with the Dualshock 2 and the Retro Fighters Defender. Alrighty, now in order to get started, we gotta select some profiles for this game. Why don't we put myself 0, and let's go ahead and set the other player as Nanners. Alrighty, now let's go into arcade mode. Alright, now with everything else set up, let's go ahead and choose our characters. Time Splitters is amazing because I have a ridiculous roster of playable characters you could use. I love using the dinosaur. Just look at how he wiggles, it's freaking amazing. Alrighty, and for Nanners, we're gonna go ahead and choose John Smith. Look at that stash. Now for this test, I went and chose the VR room. It's one of my favorite rooms, it just looks so awesome, it actually makes you feel like you're in a video game, even though we're playing a video game. Alrighty, we have the 2-player screen, we're gonna go ahead and move around. I'm on the top, and player 2, which is Nanners, is on the bottom. Let's go ahead and find Nanners first. Alrighty, there he is. Alright, so I'm aiming from afar, and you can see that everything seems to be working just fine. However, Leander wanted us to see how well you can line up a headshot while zoomed in. So let's go ahead and test that real quick. Alright, so excuse me everyone, I play inverted, so excuse the confusion. Let's go ahead and move the analog stick down and see how well that works. Alright, we're gonna tilt it down. Just a little bit more. A little bit more, and alright, okay, there we go. We got some motion. Let's go ahead and test left and right real quick. We're gonna tilt it a little bit to the right, ever so slightly. Alright, we got motion the other way too. Let's tilt it to the left a little bit more. Alright, there we go. We're gonna go ahead and move the analog stick up ever so slightly, and there we go. We got some motion detected. So moving the analog stick up seems to work well enough. However, when aiming down and to the sides, seems to require much more motion to register an input. Alright, now with that done, let's go ahead and take out Nanners anyway. Alrighty, let's get into it with the Dualshock 2. I love this transparent blue color, it's my favorite, one of the reasons why I have it. Let's go ahead and test this. We're using the Dualshock 2 controller with Nanners' character. Alrighty, we found my dinosaur, so let's go ahead and let's start aiming. Alright, let's move the analog stick up. Oh wow, that's a very narrow dead zone. Just by moving it a little bit, it already registers a movement. Alright, let's move it down now. Okay, whoa, alright, once again, a very narrow dead zone. That's pretty good. Just pushing the analog stick ever so slightly moves the camera already. That's pretty good. Seems like it's the same way with left to right. The dead zones on the Dualshock 2 are quite good. The difference is night and day when comparing the Dualshock 2 to the Retro Fighter's Defender. Alrighty, let's make sure the dinosaurs stay extinct. Alright, now let's get into the pressure-sensitive buttons. Another one of our viewers in the previous video, Brad, asked us how well the pressure-sensitive buttons work. Now, pressure sensitivity is referring to both the D-pad and the face buttons. Mainly the face buttons because some games actually detect how hard you press them. Brad wants to know how well the pressure-sensitive buttons function. And to do that, we're going to play one of my favorite games, Gran Turismo 3 for the PS2. Let's get into it. Alrighty, let's go ahead and go into arcade mode. Let's go ahead and choose Super Speedway. Let's go with Class B cars. And to ensure that our test is as precise as possible, we're going to make sure that I choose 2 identical cars for me and for Nanners. And let's go for a boxy looking car. Those are my favorites. I'll go ahead and choose silver. And now let's choose the same car for Nanners. Let's give Nanners yellow. Alrighty, let's test the Retro Fighter controller with the car on the left. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and press down on the button as light as I can until I get a register. Alrighty, we're cruising. We're cruising. A little fast, but we're cruising. Alrighty, now let's go ahead and get to a full stop. And we're gonna press this button as hard as we can. Alrighty, that seems to work pretty different. Let's go ahead and retry that one more time. Alrighty, with a light press, we're cruising, we're cruising. Alright, now let's go ahead and press it real hard. That's what I'm talking about, pedal to the metal. Alrighty, so the Defender definitely has pressure-sensitive buttons, but how do they compare with the Dualshock 2? Alrighty, let's go ahead and press down on the X button ever so slightly, see what we get. Alrighty, we're gonna continue adding pressure, and oh, notice how the number on the indicator on the right for miles per hour is slowly climbing, a lot more steadily than on the Defender. Alrighty, if we press down on it a little bit harder, alright, we're going faster. Alright, let's put pedal to the metal and let's press it down all the way. Alright, we're going at full speed. Yeah. The pressure sensitivity on the Dualshock 2 has a much wider range. Now, the Defender does indeed have pressure-sensitive buttons, however the range of pressure detection is very narrow. It seems to only detect about 2 levels of pressure, which in Gran Turismo 3 seems to register it as pushing down on the gas pedal at a normal speed, and then flooring it. However, like I mentioned before, if this isn't something you're desperately in need of, you probably won't care. Alright, we're done with our PS2 tests. Now let's get into the PS3. We're going to continue our tests of the Retro Fighter's Defender, this time against the Dualshock 3. Now the Dualshock 3 of course being the controller for the PS3, and we're going to test once again the analog stick dead zones. Truth be told, I was going to use Modern Warfare 2 to test the dead zones on these controllers, however I completely forgot that I gave away all of my Call of Duty games to a family member because I was done with the series. And we're going to have to use a different game for this test. And we're going to revisit a favorite of mine, Resistance Fall of Man for the PS3. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get into Resistance. Those of you who have been fans of the channel for years, you'll probably know that we actually played through Resistance Fall of Man. If you guys want to watch through that whole playthrough, go ahead and click on that little pop-up right there. And we're going to go to one of my favorite stages, the USS Lexington. This is one of my favorite multiplayer maps. Just like back in the day where they would have weapons scattered all over the place and nice hiding spots, it's a lot of fun. Let's go ahead and look for a sniper rifle and let's try to find Nanners. Alrighty, we found Nanners, just standing there, being himself, you know. Let's go ahead and get into sniping position. And let's go ahead and zoom in as well. Oh boy, look at that face. Alright, let's go ahead and test that right analog stick and see how well the dead zone is, again, this time on the PS3. Alrighty, I'm going to move the analog stick up ever so slightly. Ever so slightly. Alright, the dead zone for moving up doesn't seem to be that bad. It's not as tight as the DualShock 2, obviously, but let's go ahead and test the other way. All right, let's ever so slightly push. Let's go ahead and keep pushing. Oh boy, that's quite far. Yeah, in order for anything to register while moving down, seems like you really have to push the analog stick down a lot farther than normal. All right, let's go ahead and check left and right. All right, let's move it to the right. All right, not as bad as down. All right, let's go ahead and push to the left ever so slightly. All right, motion detected. All right, so this experience is very similar to the DualShock 2. Tilting up seems to not require as much motion as tilting downwards. Moving the dead zones left to right don't seem to be as bad as moving down, but you still have to move it quite far. Alrighty, let's get on to the DualShock 3. Here's my white DualShock 3, I call it Excalibur. I've used this thing for years. I like using it for my fighting games, one of my favorite D-pads of all time. Let's go ahead and use Nanners' character and go ahead and test the dead zones on this controller. All right, let's push the analog stick ever so slightly up. All right, pushing it up. Okay, we got motion. Kind of funny though, it feels very similar to the Defender. Let's go ahead and move the analog stick down and see how far we have to push. Oh boy, that's quite far actually. Let's go ahead and do that again, just to make sure. All right, the DualShock 3 seems to have more in common with the Retro Fighter's Defender. Let's test moving to the right. All right, and let's go ahead and tilt it to the left as well. Yeah, left to right seem to be pretty good, but in all honesty, it kind of feels similar to the Retro Fighter's Defender. In a surprising turn of events, they have very similar dead zones. Now, I do want to make note, like I said earlier, this may be due to the fact that I've been using my DualShock 3 for years, so the analog sticks might be worn out. However, I don't really play shooters like that, so I'm wondering if the right analog stick is just like that naturally. If I'm being honest, I'm hard-pressed to find much of a difference between the Defender and the DualShock 3 dead zones. They really are that similar. Alright, on to the pressure-sensitive buttons. Once again, our viewer Brad wants to know how well the pressure-sensitive buttons on the Defender controller work against the DualShock 3 controller. To pull that off, we're going to revisit another game I really like, Gran Turismo 5 for the PS3. Let's get into it. We featured this game once again in our contest entry for My Road to Greatness. Once again, you guys can watch that in that little pop-up from before. Alright, once again, let's go into arcade. Alrighty, let's choose a track. And yeah, let's go to Tokyo, baby. And let's make sure we choose two identical cars. All right, let's go ahead and choose this Millennium Jade color for my car. Let's go ahead and make sure Nanners gets the same car, but this time in a nice blue color. Alrighty, we're on the track. Let's go ahead and test the Defender. Let's go ahead and start pressing the button ever so slightly. All right, let's gradually add a little bit more pressure. All right, we're going faster. Let's go ahead and press it all the way down. Oh boy, all right, we're gonna stop. All right, so it is detecting pressure. Let's go ahead and try that again. All right, so you can see that it's actually detecting the pressure once again. All right, we got pressure level 1, as I like to call it. And let's go down. All right, yeah, that's the second level. All right, so that's about it for the Retro Fighter's Defender. I can't get much more range out of this. Let's go on to the DualShock 3. Let's go ahead and make sure this car is on 0 miles an hour, and let's go ahead and start pressing down on the X button ever so slightly. We're gonna ever so slightly press a little bit more. All right, you're seeing the speed. There we go. Now if we go all the way, you'll see, yep, it's going much faster. Alrighty, let's go ahead one more time and make sure that's working well. A little bit of pressure. All right, you can see the number climbing. A little bit more. All right, now let's go all the way. Just like the DualShock 2, the DualShock 3 has a much larger range of pressure it can detect. So the experience here is practically identical to the DualShock 2. You can gradually increase your speed just like if you're pressing down on a real gas pedal. Again, this will only matter to those who really need this sort of functionality in their game. And that is it. As everyone expected, and myself included, the pressure-sensitive buttons and the dead zones on the analog sticks for the Retro Fighters Offender just do not measure up to the Dualshock 2 and the Dualshock 3. With exception to the Dualshock 3, like I said earlier, mine's been used up a lot, so it's likely my analog sticks, but you guys saw the results, so it may just be the same. Test it yourselves. I do want to stress, however, that my opinion of this controller does not change. I still stand by the fact that this controller is amazing, especially for those who need a controller that can do a lot of things. I still stand by the fact that if you need a controller for the PS1, 2, 3, the PlayStation Mini, the PC, and for the Switch, this is a pretty good bargain. However, if you're looking for a controller to use in esports, like for shooter games and maybe for games that need pressure-sensitive buttons, this may not be the controller for you. If you're an absolute stickler for super tight dead zones and pressure-sensitive buttons, you might want to stick with the DualShock 2 and get yourself an adapter for that controller to use it on whatever system you want. And that's going to do it for our video today, everyone. I sure hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to slap that like button, make sure to mash the subscribe button, and let us know down in the comments below, do you still want a Retro Fighters Offender? And also, which one is your favorite DualShock controller? I myself love the DualShock 3, I used that thing a lot in my fighting games back in the day. I want to thank you guys once again for watching, and please make sure to stay tuned for more awesome content. We'll see you next time.